Brian Clough describes Roy Keane as a charming young man, adding that Keane has been the lucky break he's had this season. And Keane's rise has been dramatic. 12 months ago, Roy Keane was living in South West Ireland. He was unemployed and playing semi-professional football for Cove Ramblers.
Average gates, I suppose, 600-700 a week. So average player, I suppose, getting about 50-60 pound a week, which isn't bad. If you have a job as well, it wasn't bad enough for me. I was only 17, 18, picking up 50 quid every week or whatever.
What sort of standard is it, though, in relation to football in this country?
Well, it's the years behind. Because Cove, I used to play for our first division. The Premier isn't bad, but the first division's fairly poor. But the grounds, they're years behind.
This is where Roy Keane learnt his football, outside the family home in Cork. Inside, his parents have closely followed his football career.
That was Roy, just when he arrived over, and he was just in time for the Nottingham Forest official photograph for the season, so he was just in time. And he's there now all the time since.
There's the boss.
And there's Brian Clough himself, who was a terrible nice person, wasn't he?
He was about 14 or 15. They would say, God, he's a great lad, and he's very talented, and he can do anything with the ball, and
It's unbelievable.
it's magic.
And it's grand, we're getting a great kick out of it. We're not shouting about it, but,
Oh, we are.
but you'd have to be proud.
Everything seemed to happen very quickly for me, really. I didn't get much chance to think about it, because one minute I was on trial, and next they're offering me a contract, and after they've offered me a contract, one or two other clubs have come in, but I've just made up my mind that I'm going to sign for Forest, and there was just something taught me this. I had a gut feeling in me that was just the right club for me. The pace of the game was way quicker over here than it is at home, so that was the main thing, getting used to the pace. Like 90 miles an hour over here, you know what I mean, compared to back home.
Plenty of Keane's relations will be making the trip from Ireland to Wembley. He, though, still can't quite take in what's happened in the last year.
I know, it's just unbelievable. Obviously, a lot of ambitions, but one of them obviously to play with a first division club, and then getting to Wembley, of course, is just fantastic.
He came over from Ireland with a lot of rough edges, and Clough did a lot to polish him up into the rough diamond that Ferguson then purchased.
I remember a back pass he once gave me against Crystal Palace in a cup game, and he left it short, and I come running out my box and miskicked it. And the manager blamed Roy, and Roy ran off the pitch at the end of the game, and the manager was waiting for him, and apparently he punched him in the stomach.
Clough hit him in the dressing room, and Keane afterwards admitted that in fact he probably deserved it. He bore no malice at all, and learnt from the great man, Clough.
At Forest, in the Premier League's first season, Keane was Player of the Year in a relegated team.
We knew we weren't going to keep hold on to Roy, because he was too good to be played in the division below.
But in his novice season, Keane experienced the wrath of his notorious boss, Brian Clough. A careless back pass and a cup tie caused a goal. Clough then humiliated Keane and reduced him to tears.
It's a fabulous goal!
So obviously we've gone back into the dressing room and, heads down and dejected and fed up, and there's no Roy and there's no Mr. Clough. And the next thing we know, Roy's come into the dressing room and, he's got tears in his eyes.
Brian was good at smacking people in the stomach. He'd give you a whack in the stomach just to get a point to him. If Roy made a mistake, then he'd try and get the point to him, doing something like that.
It really hurt Roy, and he was just very dejected and head down and, again, just gutted.
By May 1991, Forest's cup run had taken them to Wembley. A year on from rejection and unemployment in Ireland, Roy Keane was playing in an FA Cup final. Surprisingly, he now admits he was distracted.
What should have been a wonderful landmark in my life became a bloody nightmare.
Keane's problem was getting match tickets for his friends back home.
I was desperate not to snub anyone. I begged and scrounged every ticket I could lay my hands on.
He needed 45, but an hour before the match, Keane still had no tickets for his two brothers. He was frantic.
I had £900 in cash. I gave my brothers the money and prayed they'd find a tout.
He daren't let people, particularly back home, think he's got too big for his boots. And that's one of his battles with the game of football, to prove to people that the game isn't going to go to his head. He's still going to be down to earth Roy, who looks after his friends.
Even when he was playing, Keane was unsure if his brothers were in the ground. It was a draining distraction.
All the nervous energy had left me drained and virtually legless.
His brothers saw the game, but Spurs scored and Forest lost, and Keane contributed little. Storing up inside Roy Keane was a belief that football was a brutal and unforgiving business. To succeed, he had to learn from its ruthlessness. In 1993, Forest, with this defeat, were relegated from the Premiership. Despite this, Keane's book surprisingly described an almost relaxed dressing room atmosphere.
Some of the players were cracking jokes in the showers. I couldn't believe it. My own reaction was a mixture of guilt and hurt.
High achievers are different. They take losing very, very personally. He thinks it's him that's lost. Don't forget, this is a man who's rejected from the game of football for being too small. So that invariably is going to impact on his self-esteem. There's always going to be that doubt. Am I good enough?
It was during these Nottingham days that a different and very unpleasant Roy Keane began to emerge. Football is notoriously a drinking culture, and Roy Keane became one of its most infamous stars.
We were staying in the Grand Hotel, and Roy comes and sits about 10 yards away from me talking to this young lady. 5 minutes into the conversation, Roy picks his pint of lager up and slings it in this girl's face. And I thought, what the hell's going off here? And he's saying something about a slag and did who I am and all this business. I said, Roy, it's time for bed. I'm not going to bed. I said, son, you're going to bed. So I stood up and physically got hold of him. And he tried to headbutt me. And that was the first time I saw Roy Keane in a different light. Then we started getting little phone calls from people in Nottingham. He's been in this wine bar, and this fella's thrown him through a plate glass window, and he's done this and he's done that.
Keane was based in Nottingham, but Forest allowed him to shuttle back and forward to Cork. Some say it staved off his homesickness, others that it just took him back to the root of his troubles.
When he was playing for Forest, he would go home after the game on the late flight, back to Cork, make it to the Temple Acre for last orders, get a lock-in, go up to the disco, get pissed, have a kebab, go home with the lads, invariably get into a scrap. This is a professional footballer.
He's still playing the Cork Rebel, which is, this is how Roy Keane behaves. If I want to go out for a drink with the lads until 3 o'clock in the morning, I will do. I'm not going to change because the game of football deems that I should. Roy leads his life by his rules.
The fight at the end of the night was the price I was prepared to pay to go home.
Keane's off-field reputation didn't deter other clubs. As Forest struggled, Keane had shrewdly negotiated a new contract which allowed him to be transferred if the club was relegated. For a man scornful of his less committed teammates, it seems hypocritical.
Had there been any trace of cynicism there or self-interest, he could have said, well, it's okay, this works in my favour. He didn't. He did more than anybody else. He was voted Player of the Year by the Forest fans. And I think that tells you something about his value system.
On the surface, Roy Keane's value system was simple. Now go to a bigger club. Forest were the past, and a career under Alex Ferguson was his future. By 1993, Roy Keane was Britain's most expensive player.
Wes Kershaw went to see them play. He was a chief scout at the time, because we're playing Forest in 2 weeks' time. And he phoned me on the way back from the game and says, I've seen a player.
And Hodge was a little too eager then, but the ball caught up with him. Parker, oh, and it's Roy Keane! Off the bar! Keane, it's in.
Glover. Keane again, it's Roy Keane! It's 2-0 Forest! The 19-year-old Irish lad who's made his name this season has now written it across the FA Cup semi-final.
Chelsea looking for offside here. And Crosby's in behind them, the flag stays down. Here comes Roy Keane, it's 1-0. No offside, Keane's away.
Keane finding Sheringham. It's a good lay-off to Jemson and back again to Keane. Excellent football, and Nottingham Forest looking to clear again. What a brilliant finish by Keane. It's 4-0.
Nigel Jemson. Nigel Clough over on the left flank, but it goes forward for Keane. Too near the goalkeeper, he hesitates. And Keane scores. 42nd minute. Roy Keane. Benny Sheringham, good move by Forest this. Roy Keane, and it's there! Roy Keane. Ball forward for Keane. Roy Keane, and it's there! Roy Keane in 48 minutes. Clough, a good ball into space there, Roy Keane dashing into it. And beautifully chipped goalkeeper Spink. And Forest ahead. Beautiful ball by Clough into space. That was filled in by Roy Keane.
Who's the best manager you played for?
Without a doubt, Brian Clough.
Not ceramics.
You asked me the question, I answered you.
Brian Clough was quite understanding that he let you go home sometimes to the family.
Like any good manager, you know, he knew I was a young player, gone off to Ireland and would give me weekends off. I think what helped as well, I went over there and he put me in the first team pretty quickly. So he obviously was obviously a father himself, knew I'd be homesick and would send me back to Ireland at least maybe once a month, which was great for me because, as I said, I was broke into the first team. Not that I was getting big money, but you know, Brian Clough also kept you grounded, and we talk about sport quite a bit and great sports people, but Brian Clough for me, on top of everything else, was a good man, which is important. You've got to work with good people, you know.
You had a lot of respect for him because did he pop at you after you made a mistake against Crystal Palace?
Yeah, but that was all part of management. He
threw a punch, did he?
Yeah, threw a punch. Yeah.
Did he connect?
Yeah, he did. But he he just hit me in the chest, and but strange enough, that happened now, probably manager would be sacked. But this is gone back, and I never felt bad about it. I never felt what he'd done to me was wrong. I gave a back pass, I don't know, against Crystal Palace in the cup, and they scored from it. So that meant we had a replay, and everyone knows, even Brian Clough admitted to it, he never really was a great one for travelling. So we had a replay, which was, you know, going to London, Crystal Palace, blah blah blah. I know it's not Australia, but it was down to London, and I came in after the game. And he says, what were you doing with the back pass? And really, it was the goalkeeper's fault, Mark Crosley. It was, but obviously I'm a team player. I took the rap for him. And so he punched me in the chest. And I always remember the shock. It was a Wednesday night. And I was that shocked, I stayed in after the game. I'd always go after a game to Ritzy on a Wednesday night in Nottingham. And
there's an old teammate of mine, he used to go with me, Raymond Burndy's over there, so I was that shocked I stayed in, but I didn't feel bad about it. I trained the next day. I never felt angry towards him that it was out of order. I just thought he was angry, he hit me, kind of deal with it.